You mean to tell me that this whole time you guys are fawning over a book about domestic violence?
I will never be reading a Colleen Hoover ever again, because the way that she wrote these assaults happening romanticizes them and portrays them as sexy and romantic, but it's just straight up.
I hated this book. It was one of the worst things that I read in 2022. Colleen Hoover romanticizes abuse.
People who take some issue with it and say that it's romanticizing abuse. That's storytelling to me, so I don't really know.
Colleen Hoover is the author of It Ends With Us, and while she's on the sidelines of the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni legal feud, in reality, she's just as bad as they are. Colleen has skeletons in her closet, and as someone who says that she stands up for survivors, she's found herself. Unfortunately, we all know the name Colleen Hoover, and that's because she has been kind of in the background of the It Ends With Us controversy, this legal dispute between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. Early on, she made it very clear that she was on Blake's side, which really rubbed people the wrong way. She's now gone into silence, come back with a fresh Instagram, and I decided, why don't we do a deep dive into her past, because it turns out she's pretty problematic. I don't know if you guys saw the movie, comment below if you did, but when it comes to her books, it seems like they're aimed towards young adults, mostly women who read these books, and they're influenced by these romanticized stories of abuse. Now, Colleen has several books, and they often include extensive character trauma, emotional, mental, physical abuse, questionable consent, and in a few cases, almost but not quite incest. Ew. Many times her male characters exhibit misogynistic behavior that gets excused because of their attractive appearance or their sexual power. Now, I am not about censorship. I understand that there is a fine line. And again, it's hard because I don't want to tell someone not to tell their story, but I'm also realizing that the audience consuming this, they're learning about stories where people are being physically harmed, and it's almost being normalized.
This comment unfortunately proves my point exactly, that authors are using sexual assault as a plot device without consequence, and that readers are just glossing over it and accepting it as normal. I haven't finished the book yet, but there's already been 2 instances where Verity assaults Jeremy. In Verity's manuscript chapter, she admits to waking Jeremy up with sex. And that is assault because Jeremy was asleep and could not consent. Had Jeremy previously stated in the book that he was okay with this happening to him, it wouldn't be as big of an issue as it is. But he never says that he's okay with this. And the reason that I say that it's been glossed over in the book is because Lowen is supposed to be a morally correct character. And as she's reading these manuscripts, it doesn't faze her that Jeremy gets assaulted. Instead, she gets jealous of his sex life. Despite enjoying the rest of this book, I will never be reading a Colleen Hoover ever again, because the way that she wrote these assaults happening romanticizes them and portrays them as sexy and romantic, but it's just straight up rape. And that's it.
These comments read, okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one who thought this. Another person writes, when I read the chapter with essay, I was like, why does nobody talk about this? Another person writes a comment about the book November 9, writing, she did this with November 9 too, but once she was called out, she took out the entire scene and reprinted the book. This article writes that Colleen's success is attributed to her loyal online fan base, largely teenage and young women who refer to themselves as the cohorts. Okay, so she's got like a stand-em over here. Colleen is often critiqued for the way that she writes about romance, and many fear that her overly graphic scenes regarding relationship dynamics and sexual interactions do not set empowering examples for her audience. I mean, even a lot of people who watched It Ends With Us weren't too happy with how the story went, which, I mean, I know it was a hit, but it also was a hit because of all the drama associated with the movie.
You mean to tell me that this whole time you guys are fawning over a book about domestic violence? They're trying to cancel It Ends With Us on Twitter because Colleen Hoover apparently romanticizes abuse. People are also sharing excerpts from the book that I cannot read this to you because I don't want to get banned. This person says, yes, it's romanticized. That's why some of us effing hate Colleen Hoover. Another person says, why the F are they making a film on this? On effing romanticization, abusive relationships, and domestic violence? Seriously? And this whole conversation of Colleen Hoover glorifying, romanticizing abuse has been a discussion topic for the longest time. It's even on her subreddit. People are like, do we think she's glorifying it? But a lot of readers have come to her defense saying that, no, that's not what the book is about at all. It's about a woman who fell in love with an abuser, and the way it's written makes you fall in love with him too. And that was done on purpose, to get you into the mind of an abuse victim. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Colleen Hoover herself says that her dad was abusive toward her mom. And that inspiration trickled into It Ends With Us.
Now, to further cash in on It Ends With Us, they decided to put out a coloring book. I mean, we're talking about a story of DV, and Are we inviting children to color within these books? Like, are adults coloring these books? I mean, I don't have the time, but shout out to those people out there coloring the books because that does sound peaceful. Imagine doing that by a nice little pool, a little bit of a lemonade. Colleen apologized for a planned coloring book based on her novel about domestic violence. She put a statement on her Instagram story which disappeared after 24 hours but was widely reported on by media outlets. She writes, the coloring book was developed with Lily's, so the main character, Lily's strength in mind, but I can absolutely see how tone deaf it is. I hear you guys and I agree with you. No excuses, no finger pointing. I've contacted the publisher to let them know I would prefer if we don't move forward with it. One person rates, I don't even know what to say. Another rates, this is not okay. A coloring book should not be a thing here.
Coloring book that is being published based on Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us, a book that is about domestic violence. You guys know that I hated this book. It was one of the worst things that I read in 2022. And every time that I talk about it, I emphasize the fact that it is not a romance. Despite how it is being marketed and despite how the story is framed, this is not a romance. We see that this is coming from those two areas, both the publisher and the author pushing it as a romance, talking about it as a romance. So people say, well, I knew that. And also that by the end, you get the message that domestic violence is bad. But that doesn't take away from the lens through which we see the beginning of the story. And that is one that is highly, highly romanticized. No amount of tacking on a happily ever after onto this with some other guy makes this story a romance, because the core relationship that we are exploring is between a woman and her abuser. Why it's so obvious to me that this is romanticized is the way that people talk about this, like her fandom out, in comments, adding on a coloring book in which we are told that it was going to highlight memorable scenes and quotes in a book where the main male lead bloodies his significant other. I mean, that's just more proof. Colleen Hoover romanticizes abuse.
Now, some people in the comments had some great questions, like this one. I just want to know, what are they coloring? Him hitting her? Him throwing her down the stairs? Or was that a different Coho book? Which, I mean, that is so insane when you put it down that way. Like, yeah, you're right. What are we coloring here? Is it just wallpaper prints? Because nothing else would make sense. Another comment reads, as a survivor of DV, thank you. I didn't survive just to have the life I escaped from romanticized. In any way, I appreciate you speaking up about this. Now let's take a look at what Colleen had to say for herself on the red carpet.
So you've spoken so many times before about how this is a deeply personal story for you as well. What is it like to see that come to life on the big screen?
Oh, it's been incredible. Like, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I was very fearful at first. You want them.
Wait, why does she kind of look like Blake Lively? Like, doesn't Blake Lively kind of have like a mole right here too? Wait, I'm like tripping out right now. They can't. I'm sorry. It's probably not even true.
Whoever's adapting it to make a painful adaptation for the readers that love and support the book, and I really think they did a
No, wait. I see them. They have this.
wonderful
That's
job.
Why do you
That's why Blake was cast. It all makes sense now.
think this story in particular has been so resonant with readers for so long now?
I honestly don't know. I sadly think maybe it's because so many people relate to the subject matter, which is really sad. But I think people that read the book have either been through it or know someone who's been through it, so they find it relatable in a way, and that's an unfortunate thing.
And while there are lots of people who love this book, there are also people who take some issue with it and say that it's romanticizing abuse. What do you say to that?
I mean, I find Lily's journey empowering and honest and truthful, and
Why is she so smiley when replying to this?
the fact that she doesn't make all the right decisions, I mean, that's storytelling to me, so I don't really know.
Now let's talk about Colleen Hoover's support of Blake Lively when it comes to this It Ends With Us lawsuit. Colleen is standing with Blake Lively after the actress filed a harassment lawsuit against Justin Baldoni. Colleen writes, you have been nothing but honest, kind, supportive, and patient since the day we met, tagging Blake Lively. Thank you for being exactly the human you are, never change, never wilt. And it does seem like at some point there was a big flip-flop between Justin and Colleen and Blake, where she decided to leave Justin's side and join Blake's.
So I just found this clip of something Colleen Hoover said about Justin Baldoni at Book Bonanza.
When Justin said he wanted to play Ryle, I was on board for that. I thought that he kind of was what I envisioned when I wrote the book.
But if you have looked at Justin Baldoni's lawsuit and timeline, then you would know that Colleen Hoover was the one who suggested he play Ryle. Justin Baldoni provided several emails sent between him and Colleen Hoover ahead of turning It Ends With Us into a movie. Justin reached out to Colleen Hoover with the idea of optioning the book into a movie under his production company Wayfarer Studios. And he never mentioned acting in the film until Colleen suggested it, which she did right here on April 12th, 2019. She sent in an email, have you given any thought to whether whether you would want an acting role in this. Say maybe Ryle? I could see it. But that's not what she said at Book Bonanza. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the allegations made against Justin Baldoni, but it's just interesting to see that she made this comment at Book Bonanza, because as a reminder, Book Bonanza happened in the midst of Blake Lively allegedly taking over the film, and Justin Baldoni was not allowed to go to Book Bonanza. Instead, Blake Lively, Brandon Sklenar, and Colleen Hoover went, and Blake, quote-unquote, snuck the movie in to show fans without Sony's approval, because it wasn't done being edited. During the event, Colleen was talking about casting Justin as Ryle, and said that he was the one who suggested it, which I almost feel like is just setting up the distance between Justin Baldoni and the rest of the cast from that point, before any allegations were publicly made and before they even appeared separately for PR, when speculation started forming about what happened between the cast.
These comments read the way that she switched up on him like there aren't receipts. I love that. It's such a mean girl thing to do. It's so sad because he genuinely read the book and wanted to put it to life. Another comment reads from Chris, she stammered a lot getting that out. Now, because of all this lawsuit drama, Colleen decided to go private on social media. You've got to keep in mind, she's got a large fan base. This is how she sells her books, so to go private is a big deal for her. Now, I think for Colleen, it got very personal very quickly because she is at the center of this in a way, and there's no way that she's not going to be like pooled to testify, or at least in discovery when it comes down to this lawsuit. So she's heavily involved and probably trying to disconnect herself, but it's a little bit too late.
Okay, so things are looking pretty bad for Colleen Hoover right now. Over the last 24 hours, we're getting like a little bit of insight as to why she just ghosted on social media. It's not as innocent as she just didn't want to be involved in the drama. This is a post on Reddit, but it makes a lot of sense. Here's the tea, allegedly. We all know that Justin bought the rights to Hoover's books about 5 years ago. And we all know that she just did a Houdini on social media after she backstabbed Justin, her #1 fan who wanted to put her story on film, by immediately backing Blake Lively. This is where it gets fucking fishy. Apparently, there's a morality clause in the contract which states that Hoover would have the option to obtain the book rights back and then resell if, wait for it, the current owner would be accused of something as heinous as sexual harassment. These months, everybody's been talking about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds wanting to rip the rights from Justin so that they could produce and direct the next sequel. Justin did not accept any of the offers to sell, and there ultimately was no other choice to take the IP from him at this point. Then we know what happens next. And I just learned this, but apparently this wasn't a secret. This article on IMDb is from October of last year, and it says Ryan Reynolds reportedly wants to buy out Justin Baldoni from It Ends With Us at any cost. And going back in time a little bit more to August of last year, another content creator found this interview.
Or you can have a what? A sequence. Like it starts with us. I mean, if Colleen has her rights, I'll go anywhere. I'll follow this woman anywhere. Y'all heard her.
At that point in time, Justin still had the rights. He was not going to sell the rights at all for any reason. Why would they be talking about Colleen Hoover getting the rights?
This comment reads, there's the motive. Another person writes, that movie does not need a sequel. Another comment reads, it's calculated. It ends with a lawsuit. And then finally, girl, you really cracked the code. It all adds up now. Now, what's really interesting about Colleen and her books and the stories that she tells is that people, they worry that it affects young people. And I think that it could have an influence on it, maybe normalize it. And if she were to argue that, I would tell her to look at her own home, because there have been serious allegations about her own family members. And I'm not trying to come for your son, but her son was called out on Twitter regarding a sexual harassment allegation. In February 2022, this person tweeted, her son also sexually harassed me and she blocked me when I spoke up about it to her. Just to give you guys context, her son's name is Levi. She writes, long story short, we were friends on Snapchat and stuff. We talked every day and we'd message because we were friends, and then this was when I was 16, and he was fully aware of how old I was because I always talked about the fact that I was still in school. She also provided some evidence of her reaching out to Colleen to tell her that this was going on. She writes, I can prove our friendship through my Instagram DMs and the fact that I have him on Snapchat, but besides that, there isn't much I can do. I'm sorry for having disturbed you, and I promise I'm not looking for anything or any sort of drama. So it turns out that it looks like Levi is 24 years old right now. He would have been 21 at the time of this allegation. And again, this person, whoever they are on Twitter, is claiming to be 16. So pretty messy. We don't have too many facts here, but there is this community of the cohorts. Remember, these people who love Colleen Hoover, and there was a lot of pressure within that community for her to address what was going on about these rumors with her son. So in November of that same year, in 2022, she posted on a private Facebook group of her, like culty fan base, like the people who are the top tier of her fan group. Not to call them a cult, I'm sorry, they're more of a stan. She writes a lot, but she writes, things are being said about my son that are not accurate. People are commenting that I blocked a girl for informing me that my son SA'd her when she was 16. This did not happen. This is not what was even said by this person. My son and a girl were online friends for several months. They have never even met in person. She lives in a different country. He said something to her in a message that made her uncomfortable. He asked her to send him a pic, so she messaged me about it. I did not read the message, but she thought I did. So there's a little bit more of the truth here, but it's not, again, as serious as, like, I guess what these rumors actually became. I guess in February, once it first started, it just snowballed into something else, but still pretty creepy. She goes on to say that this is so damaging to victims who speak out, and also ridiculous because I would never pay hush money to cover up something stupid my kids said. They're responsible for their words and their actions. I am not a mother who would cover up that behavior. Interesting how she's like, I can't tell what side that she's on, especially when she's Team Blake. No matter what state you are in, it is legal for an adult to seek illicit photos from minors. This means anyone under the age of 18, period. Levi knew the girl was 16, and he knew he was 21, which technically is a felony. Colleen spoke to the minor instead of the minor's parents. Colleen did not report this to police. Colleen instead minimized what her son did. So this is people are really upset with her over this article. I don't know if this is a caption or an article that we're pulling from. Hear me again. It does not matter the state. Using the internet to solicit illicit photos from minors is a federal crime. Now, there's not a lot of information on her son or what happened there, but there were rumors that Colleen was headed towards retirement because the drama was just a little bit too much for her to handle.
Colleen Hoover, the author of It Ends With Us, has made a post on Facebook clearing up some rumors, including the fact that she's retired. Because most of you have been with me during my entire 14-year publishing journey, I owe you some promises for our future together. I promise that I can sleep at night with a peaceful heart. I promise I'm okay. I promise I'm happy. I promise my 2-person staff of over 10 years still works for me. They would fire me before I fired them. I promise I'm just rotting at home doing my favorite things, watching Bravo with a Diet Pepsi at my side and melted chocolate somewhere in my bra. I promise I will continue to try and be present in here as much as possible, but I honestly don't have social media on my phone at all anymore, and I promise it's bliss. So kindly don't come back and read this promise too many times. I promise that as long as I still have readers who want to read what I write and readers who want to see film adaptations, and if I have fingers that can type, I will still be trying. Maybe at the speed of a turtle, but I will still be trying. I promise to host more giveaways, and I promise to close them out in a timely manner. I promise people care more about the number of clicks on their videos than the mental health of the people they are making videos about. I promise that your kind messages are helping, and I promise I also have the familial support system everyone on this earth deserves to have. And finally, I promise to myself that I will let them.
I want to hear what you guys think of Colleen in the comments below. Are you a big fan of hers? Do you think she's shady by chance? I want to hear what you guys think. Let me know, and I'll see you in a new video soon. Bye, guys.